All right, welcome to this odd um, episode of the Comics Multiverse. I am sitting in my car, but don't worry, I'm not going to go off on some crazy diatribe. We're going to be talking about a Kickstarter, and we have a returning guest. So let me just go ahead and bring them in, and we'll find out about them and their project. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi.
Doing great.
Now, those so if you've seen any of my interviews before, you may remember that back in 2002, James and I talked to when he was doing Shakespeare Unleashed, the Kickstarter then, and when I saw that he was doing another one, I wanted to talk to him again and see how things were going, and he was gracious enough to make time to this, and I'm glad that Zach, that you were able to show up.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, tell me a little bit about your journey with comic books. Do you remember maybe the first one you read, or kind of when you realized that, you wanted to you know get into read them?
Well, for me, it's either one of two. It was either the little. You remember the old He-Man toys
Yes,
in the 80s?
I, s-
I
I
don't
still
I don't
have
know
them.
how I don't know if you're as old as me, but they used to have like little comic books
Mhm.
behind the figures. So I'm almost sure that was like the first comic books I've read was the He-Man things, and I used to look through those. The other
Okay.
thing is those old Garfield books, comic strip books that those like came out every Thanksgiving or whatever. And I used to read. I used to look at those. I love looking at the art of those. And that
Nice.
was probably around 5 or 6, I think. But as far as superhero comics or just comic books in general, I think I really got into it uh, probably with like Spider-Man. And yeah, Spider-Man and X-Men was my
Mhm.
thing when I was a kid.
Cool. And James, I know I asked you this question, but it's been over a year, and I forgot. But I will be including that our previous interview when I post this up.
I'll probably give a completely different answer now. I mean, I was probably about 5'2", and I was obsessed with books. So I only read comics probably up until I was about like 10 or 11. The first books I remember owning were those. See, I was the opposite of Zach, because I remember having those giant books. They had like those giant like series of like Superman 1 and Justice League. They were like 2 or 3 feet long. And I remember having that collection. I know they had like a Dick Tracy one. So I was like really obsessed with that and collecting all those. So those were probably the first ones that I had. But it really started with probably like watching the old Batman Adam West show, and just like kind of being obsessed with like Batman when I was a little kid. And then probably getting into the comic books from there. And then it was like Superman the movie came out, and then I was obsessed with Superman, and then I hated Batman for a long time. I don't know why I had to choose one, but that's what I felt like at the time. And then it just went from
we
there.
will we will be comparing your answers of last time.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I've given you the same answer word for word.
Mhm. All right. Well, so James, what have you been up to since we last chatted? And congratulations, you were nominated for the Bram Stoker Award, or did
Yes.
you nominated? They haven't been announced, right? Correct?
No, that's at the ceremony in June. So yeah, so Shakespeare Unleashed was nominated like last week for the Stoker Award, and then just about an hour ago, it was nominated for a Rondo Hatton Award. So also Monstrous magazine, the first issue was also nominated for Rondo. So 2 Rondos today, both in the categories that I won last year. So this all sounds kind of ridiculous. Yeah, it's been it's been a very interesting last 2 years.
And have you done any other projects since uh, you wrapped up the Shakespeare?
Yeah, last year we did Dead Detective Society, and then the first issue of Monstrous.
Okay. So tell me a bit. Tell me about your current campaign, which I believe there's about a week or so left.
Well, that's the Omega 11. So that was an idea that Zac brought to me about like a year and a half ago. That he had this idea for this old character, Dr. Omega, that he discovered, and him as a time traveler, and then pulling off this heist, and then gathering up all these other public domain characters.
Yeah. It's I wanted for a long time to do sort of like a public domain group, not sort of like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but I was more kind of influenced by uh, like the old pulp heroes like Doc Savage and The Shadow, but I noticed they weren't in public domain, so that kind of gave me the idea of wanting to do like go back and do like characters like Robin Hood and characters that are very clearly in the public domain, but I never really thought of a way to bring them together. And then, like in my research, I kind of found out that this Dr. Omega guy could have been. I read somewhere that he could have been They think he might have been the inspiration for Doctor Who, and he looked a lot like the first Doctor, like William Hartnell, and so that gave me the idea of this sort of Doctor Who, H.G. Wells time traveler sort of pastiche that goes through time and kind of builds a team. Thought it could be a fun idea.
Cool. So who are the main characters? I know you mentioned the one, but who are the main characters of the book?
For the first issue, it's Dr. Omega and Artful Dodger, and Artful Dodger from Oliver Twist, and he's kind of like the short round to Dr. Omega's Indy, and then we got Morgan Le Fay and Merlin that appear in the book, and they're not necessarily part of the team, but I think each issue we're gonna kind of build upon the team and bring people together. And one character that definitely shows up is going to be Arsène Lupin, and we have a weird twist on him.
Cool. James, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, in the first issue, we don't really get too much into the 11. So we have expanded the comic now. It's now going to be at least 32 pages. So we added Lupin. Now he's going to be in the issue, so that's cool. But then really in the second issue is really when we get into the more of the characters. So issue one's more of a setup. But I'm really happy that we have expanded now, because now we can get more into that, and now it's always cool to have a bigger issue. So 32 pages, I think, is a lot cooler. So, but we have 5 issues, so we have a lot of ground to cover. So I think throughout the series, we're going to be adding a lot more characters, and and then they'll have all the bad guys and the antagonists too. So there's going to be a ton of characters in there.
Okay. So tell me, how did you guys start working together? How did you guys meet? I know you said that, that Zach had the idea and he approached you, but had you worked before together or?
Yeah, we've done a bunch of projects now together. I think I needed a colorist like 5 years ago. I think I met Zach in like one of those Facebook groups. So he did the coloring for that, and that book never came out though. So then I kept using Zach for all my other Kickstarters. Then I started doing the Kickstarters in 2021. So I think Zach's been part of all the projects after that.
Okay. So Zach, tell me a little bit about your creative influences. Who influences your art style?
Well, I grew up. Let's see. Uh, I was really reading comics at the late 80s, early 90s. And I was a big Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane fan. And of course, they were the X-Men and Spider-Man artists that I was reading at the time. Really like Dale Keown on the Hulk. Just a bunch of superhero comics, really. And like other artists I liked was H.R. Geiger and Frank Frazetta. I was really into Looney Tunes, and this is probably more of as far as influenced my style. I think cartoons probably influenced me more in comic books.
Mhm.
As far as the like writers, I think Warren Ellis, I think, was a big influence on this particular project, just because I was a big fan of Planetary, and he kind of did a thing in Planetary where he touched on a lot of old um, kind of pulp things. He couldn't use he kind of made like pastiche. He'd like to make pastiches of different characters. Like Apollo and Midnighter was very much Batman, Superman, and with a weird twist. And then he'd go and he kind of did his own Doc Savage and Shadow and Tarzan. And I always wanted to do that, except with the actual characters. Do something that brings them all together.
And James, how about your influences on the writing end?
Comic books, I would say Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Brian K. Vaughan. Pro stuff, artists like Stephen King, Joe Lansdale, Neil Gaiman. But I'm probably more influenced by like the movies and stuff. I grew up with Star Wars and Superman and Indiana Jones, so that stuff always kind of comes out in anything I write. And then Flash Gordon and the old movie serials from like the 30s and 40s. So I feel like that stuff probably influenced my writing more than the writers that I read.
Mhm.
Because I read like Stephen King and Elmer Leonard and James Ellroy, but then I don't really write anything like that, or I haven't, published anything like that. So the stuff really more comes out. Pretty much all the stuff that I've been doing is really like the stuff that I was into when I was like 6 or 7 years old. You know.
And for you as a writer, I mean, I only know some of you from your horror stuff. Was writing this story like something new for you to kind of stretch your um, writing ability?
I mean, it's new for me. It's new probably for people, who've been following my other stuff, but it's not new for me. This is like more probably along the lines of what I do, or but that's because I did like the Dead Jack Detective,
Mhm.
Zombie Detective series, so that's much more in line with that, like the humor and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's different as far as like the anthologies I put out. So and it's also the first comic book series that I'm writing. But I would say this is exactly what I'm into. So that's why when Zach came
Yeah.
the idea, I was like, wow, okay, this is exactly something that I would have, wish I came up with. So it's not new for me, but yeah, I mean, this has been a little bit of a different, thing, I think, for like the previous backers. They say, oh, we thought you probably wouldn't come out like a horror anthology or something like that, and not a sci-fi comic.
Now, Zach, do you do the coloring also?
Yeah. That was coloring's been my bread and butter forever. I couldn't when I started when I was like 18 or 19, and I couldn't find work drawing because I wanted to be a penciler, but the place that I could find that was around where I lived was coloring books, and I got into that, and I wasn't a guy who could color that well. Like I had no, so I just sort of learned the hard way and taught myself how to. Uh, it was the old Photoshop back then, and it was just much easier to find work as a colorist, and I just I got kind of fast at it. So over the years, that's most of the work I would do. But I always had like illustration jobs, But this is the first. I've done a few comics, drew in color a few comics. This is the first like creator owned thing that I've worked on that I'm putting
Okay.
out, publishing anyway.
So I know you said that the first issue's a lot of setup, but is there a character that you know readers will see that maybe that when you first came up with them you were like, okay, I need them here, but as you've fleshed things out, that you have become more attached to them?
I mean, I would say that Artful Dodger was a character that is like one of those that almost like it was like an afterthought throwing him in there, and then then as we developed him, it was like, oh, this is like probably my favorite character.
Yeah, and that was James's idea,
Yeah.
and I was thinking of all these like, kind of superhero-esque, like Sherlock Holmes or Dracula or whatever. I was trying to think of the biggest guns, and he's like Artful Dodger. I was like, he's just a kid. What's he gonna do? And and then I drew him, and I'm like, oh god, I love this guy already. And the dynamic of kind of him having a sidekick, and just the way they play off each other was, yeah, he's like my favorite character now for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to do like we're Rick and Morty, like Rick is the crazy one and Morty is kind of like the same one. So I wanted to kind of reverse that, where like the kid is the crazy one, and Omega's no,
Yeah.
calm down, and he's the one getting them all in trouble, and the one like kind of he's kind of like the muscle too, because he's a little violent and crazy. So I like that idea of like having this kind of unpredictable, almost like a Joe Pesci type of character in there. Like you don't know what he's gonna do.
So the campaign has already met its goal, but that doesn't mean people should not back it. What are you offering for reward levels for those people to back the project?
Well, we have 5 covers. We have a variant from Dave Acosta, and we have a variant from J.K. Woodward. Zac did 3 covers. He did the main cover and two homage covers. So we have a Rick and Morty homage cover, and we have a Calvin and Hobbes cover. We have stickers. We have a really cool trading card set. So we just expanded that to a 6-card set, and that'll be included in that as a sketch card that Zac will draw. And we just added the Lupin card, so that's really cool. And then we have Monstrous Magazine, which we're number 2, which is also available through the Kickstarter. And then we have some original art and stuff.
And so, hold on, I had a question there. So sorry. Yeah. So you said it is a 5-issue series. I heard that correctly, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, are there any? Have you noticed any differences with this Kickstarter compared to other ones that you've run, or are things kind of trending the same way that they usually do?
I think this one started out slower, and maybe it's because the time when I don't usually launch the campaigns this early in the year, but then it's actually picking up. So it's actually getting like kind of stronger. So that usually goes the other way around. It usually starts off really big and then it just tapers down. But we're actually doing better now in like the 3rd week. So that's unusual. So I don't know if it's the timing. I don't know if it's that it also people needed to kind of catch up. Like I said, this is kind of different for me as far as the campaigns go. And one thing we did learn, like doing like the podcast stuff, is that a lot of people weren't familiar with Dr. Omega. So I think also it was like kind of like a learning curve. I think people kind of needed to know who he was and who the characters were. So that's one thing I was trying to do on social media, is kind of like also put up like little like bios on the characters, and then kind of introduce them to the comic. And so I think it was starting off a little bit slower because of that. But it's picked up, and it's doing pretty good.
Now, Zach, have you done Kickstarters in the past?
I've worked on a lot of Kickstarters, but this is the first one that's half mine. So yeah, I've definitely worked on other people's Kickstarters, but I've never been you know, in charge of helping push it, you know. So that's a new thing. It's kind of fun actually. Like I had a little bit of anxiety about sliding into people's DMs. you know, here's a link to my book. Check it out, please. And but now I'm addicted to it. So it's like I just hope Facebook doesn't ban me for
Right.
talking to so many people.
Well, we have a little more time. Would you guys like to play 5 questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. First question is what is your guilty pleasure comic book or comic book series that might not that people might not think of as normal?
Well, I just got the 2 issues of from this old TV show called Sledgehammer, and
I
no
remember
one's
that.
you remember Sledgehammer. So
Oh yeah.
I'm really surprised because when I put that up, I thought no one would remember that show. It was one of my favorite shows, and I didn't even know it had a comic. So I got the 2 comics off of eBay. I started reading them. They're actually pretty good. They're actually pretty funny. So it was surprising. So, I mean, I would love to try to get the rights to Sledgehammer and then and do a comic. So, I mean, that might be possible.
Mine's very obscure. I read a lot of manga, and there's this one that's just batshit crazy called Da Da Dan or something. It's got a weird name, and it's about it's about this boy and girl. The guy's really nerdy. They're high school kids, and he's obsessed with UFOs, and she believes in ghosts, and they both think each other's full of shit. So they dare each other. He's supposed to go to a haunted place, and she's supposed to go to a place that has a lot of UFOs. Well, they both get abducted by she gets abducted by UFOs, and he gets possessed by a demon ghost thing. So it's all about their adventures, and it's just it's it's insane. Like it's good, but it's like you can't show a page to someone and then not think you're a freak for reading it because it's all over the place. I think there's
Okay.
actually an anime coming out this year sometime for it, so people will know. no, no, we'll know soon. I think.
So Dr. Omega's, as you said, he's kind of like a Doctor Who. Do you guys watch Doctor Who? And if so, who's your favorite Doctor, and which one would you want to be the companion with?
Hmm.
Well, my favorite Doctor is David Tennant for sure. I do like. I think the Matt Smith era got really good. So he's not necessarily my favorite Doctor, but I think he had like some of the best episodes. And my favorite companion, I can't think of her name. I think is it Melanie Pond? It's Karen Gillan. Just because I
Yeah,
love
it's
her. Yeah, she's
Amy Pond.
yeah Amy Pond. And
I'll take it too.
well, it was I forget how the story went, but River Song was her name was maybe Melody Pond. Her real name was Melody. Something I don't know, but yeah, like Karen Gillian, like I love her and she's hilarious.
James.
Oh, I started watching with Tom Baker. So I mean, it's pretty close though for me with Tom Baker and David Tennant. But Tom Baker's like the quintessential Doctor Who, and I didn't watch it as a kid, for some reason because I remember them like always like promoting it like on PBS, and it always seemed like it was on PBS. It was this British thing, so it seemed like it was maybe like educational or something or very stodgy. So I always kind of like uh ignored Doctor Who when I was a kid. But then, like when Netflix came around, like the first Netflix, or like when they were mailing DVDs, that was one of the first things that I got was the old Doctor Who stuff. So I started with Tom Baker in the 70s, and it was like, this is amazing. And then the reboot came out. So then I was like, kind of like, I was all ready for that. And then I started reading like the Doctor Who novels all from the 70s too. I think it was like the Tom Baker era, and they were really good. They were like really well written. So I mean, I guess I would say like Tom Baker then probably edges out David Tennant. And I like that that companion he had, Leela. It was like that savage warrior woman that he was hanging around with at one point, which was cool. But Amy Pond, I would, yeah, either one.
So, question number 3: where do you stand on comic book grading, like slabbing and?
Oh,
huh?
I've never done that. I wanted to do that with that one shot of a Kolchak that I have, but it just seemed like such an annoying process that I have to like I have to have a subscription and I got to send it in. So I actually subscribed like 2 years ago, and I've still been paying for it, and just to do this, and I've never gotten around to doing it.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I have a lot of friends who've done it and stuff, but I think I've done. Is that sort of like the CGC grading? Is that
Yeah.
kind of what they do? Yeah, I've done sketch covers that's been graded. The people got graded, but yeah, like that's not something I would. I'm not much of a collector. Like I always buy comics just to sort of read them and put them on my shelf,
Yeah.
but I never been so into it that that's something I need to do. Maybe if I found like a real old valuable one or something.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of like locking up the comic so you can't
Yeah.
look at it anymore. I have all these issues of Kolchak, so I just thought it'd be cool to have it kind of like in the slab. But yeah, I wouldn't. And it seems like they drive up the price so much just because it's in the slab.
All right. Question 4: if you had to pick 4 books, you could only read 4 books for the rest of your life, 4 comics, what would they be? I'll allow omnibuses and trades.
I would say Saga, Watchmen. Let's see, something like Tomb of Dracula or something. And yeah, I mean, you'd be better off with something that has like a really long run, right?
Yeah.
I guess Sandman.
Okay.
Let's see. Like I said, I read a lot of manga. So like my favorite is One Punch Man and Berserk. And then I would probably pick Watchmen as well. And I think like I really want I don't know if it exists, but they do have the Marvel Essential books that are sort of like omnibuses. But
Mhm.
I just want the whole thing of the Jack Kirby run uncolored. I don't have it. I know it's out there. I kind of been looking at it. But the Fantastic Four, Jack Kirby, that's just all the black and whites.
Okay. And I guess my last question for this round would be, if any of the major comic publishers approached you, uh, what is the one character that you would most like to work on?
I mean, I would say probably Spider-Man or Deadpool.
Spider-Man for sure. But if I were to be completely honest, I would be more interested in like if Marvel let me do something, I'd dig out some obscure, weird character from the pit and
Sure.
and do. I would love to do Howard the Duck and Man Thing for sure.
So yeah. I
All
mean, one
right.
of my
So,
as a kid.
go ahead.
If I don't know if anyone remembers this, it was US. It was called US1 Trucking. It was like 1983, and it was like a trucking, like it was like a trucking superhero, and like there was the guy called like the Highwayman was the other trucker guy that was like trying to run him off the road, and he was in a really bad car accident, and they had to like replace like his skull, so he had like a metal plate in his skull, but it would pick up CB transmission. That was kind of like his superpower. And I
That's the
just
worst
had
superpower
it
ever.
I found it came out and it was like, oh, US1 #1. It's gonna be valuable. So I started collecting, thinking that it was gonna make a lot of money. And I had like the first 5 or 6 issues, and it's kind of a crazy book. But that would be cool to revive that.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
All right. So as we wrap up here, give me one last pitch for the campaign and where people can find your stuff on the interwebs.
It's Omega 11. It's Doctor Who meets Ocean's 11. It's a lot of fun, sci-fi. We deal with a lot of classic characters. The series will, and it's Please check it out.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of really amazing art, and the Lupin character we just revealed, and the art for that's amazing. And he's like a mashup of Phantom of the Opera. So it's gonna be a really cool character. Yeah, so like the character's gonna be like very different takes. So it's not gonna be like just Robin Hood, say. It's gonna be like this different spin on it. So it's gonna be pretty interesting. And yeah, it's just gonna be a really fun series. And I think it's just gonna get more and more wild as it goes on.
All right. And where can we find you on social media, or if you're on social media?
Yeah, probably the best place to go is monstrousbooks.com. All the links are there.
Okay.
And I'm at zacsart.com and at Zac Atkinson on all the social medias.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time this afternoon. James, it was great to touch base with you, and thank you for taking the time. I know we're trying to work something out through your PR people. So, but I want to thank you guys, and good luck with the rest of this campaign. And maybe we'll touch base on for book 5.
Oh,
See
yeah.
how things have gone for you, and see get your thoughts on the series as a whole.
Yeah, thanks, Chad.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, this was fun.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.